I said stand up. Now. You don't get to ignore a lawful order.
Officer, my hands are visible. I am not a threat.
You don't decide that. Identify yourself or you're leaving in cuffs.
Fought for the Constitution you're violating right now.
Yeah, save it. Up, now.
Officer Kyle Vance had been wearing the badge of the Fort Worth Police Department for exactly 11 months. He was 24 years old, fresh out of the academy, and possessed the kind of unearned confidence that often precedes a catastrophic fall. He stood 6 feet tall, his uniform pressed sharp, his hand resting too casually near his holster. He looked down at the man in the booth with a sneer that he thought looked authoritative but actually looked petulant. The man in the booth was Marcus Thorne. He was 58 years old, wearing a faded green field jacket over a flannel shirt, his hands resting quietly around a white ceramic mug. He didn't look up with fear. He didn't flinch. He looked up with the tired, heavy patience of a man who had seen things that would make Officer Vance weep in the fetal position. It was 11:45 a.m. on a Tuesday in October. The Iron Skillet Diner was humming with the sound of clattering silverware, sizzling bacon, and the low roar of conversation. It was a staple of the community. The kind of place with vinyl booths that had been patched with duct tape and waitresses who called everyone sugar. But the conversation had died. The silverware had stopped clattering. Every set of eyes in the restaurant was fixed on booth 4 near the window. What Vance didn't know, what his arrogance wouldn't let him see, was that he wasn't talking to a vagrant. He was talking to a retired Marine Corps major with 25 years of service, a Silver Star recipient, and a man who was currently sitting on the board of directors for a local veterans housing initiative. Marcus Thorne had come to the Iron Skillet for a specific reason. It was tradition. Every year on the anniversary of the Battle of Fallujah, he met with his old platoon sergeant to drink black coffee and eat cherry pie. It was a solemn ritual. He was quiet. He was respectful. He was grieving. But Officer Vance didn't see a grieving hero. He saw a black man in an old jacket sitting alone, and when the panicked manager, a man named Brad Jenkins, who cared more about curating the vibe than serving the community, made the call, Vance saw an opportunity to flex his authority. "Last warning." Vance barked, his voice cracking slightly, betraying his youth. "Identify yourself or get moving." "I have identification," Thorne said, his voice a low rumble, steady as a rock. "It's in my pocket. I'm going to reach for it slowly." "Don't you move!" Vance shouted, his hand twitching. "You stand up, hands where I can see them." It was a scene that would end up costing the city of Fort Worth $1.2 million. It would destroy Kyle Vance's career before it even truly began. It would bankrupt a manager's reputation. But before we get to the gavel and the settlement, we have to understand how we got here. Where are you watching from today? If you believe that our veterans deserve better than this, please hit that subscribe button. We need to shine a light on these stories because if we don't, they keep happening in the dark. The rain had started to drizzle outside, streaking the window next to Thorne. He took a sip of his coffee, ignoring the officer's shout for a split second, a deliberate act of defiance that sent a ripple of shock through the room. "Officer," Thorne said, setting the mug down. "I am a retired major in the United States Marine Corps. I am waiting for my sergeant. I am not leaving." Vance laughed. It was a cruel, dismissive sound. "Yeah, and I'm the King of England. Up, now." To understand the gravity of the mistake Officer Vance was making, you have to understand the man he was trying to intimidate. Marcus Thorne was not a man who was easily rattled. You don't survive 3 tours in Iraq and 2 in Afghanistan by having thin skin. Thorne had enlisted at 18 right out of high school in 1983. He hadn't joined for college money or for glory. He joined because his father had been in Vietnam and his grandfather had been in Korea. Service was the family business. He started as a grunt carrying a rifle in the mud and worked his way up through sheer grit and intelligence. He went from enlisted to officer, earning his commission through the Mustang program, respected by both the brass above him and the boots on the ground below him. The scars on his face, a jagged line running from his left ear down to his jaw, weren't from a bar fight. They were from shrapnel taken during an ambush in Anbar province in 2004. His unit had been pinned down for 6 hours. Thorne, then a captain, had coordinated the counterattack while bleeding from the neck and leg. He refused evacuation until every one of his Marines was accounted for. That was the day he earned the Silver Star. But today he wasn't wearing his dress blues. He wasn't wearing his medals. He was wearing his retirement uniform, comfortable jeans, sturdy boots, and that old M65 field jacket that he'd had since the 90s. It was frayed at the cuffs. It smelled faintly of tobacco and old canvas. To him, it was comfortable. To the outside world, specifically, the judgmental eyes of the Iron Skillet's management, it looked like poverty. Thorne lived a quiet life now. He lived in a modest ranch house 3 miles from the diner. He spent his days woodworking and volunteering. He was a pillar of the local VFW. He paid his taxes on time. He drove a 2015 Ford F-150 that he kept spotless. He had arrived at the Iron Skillet at 11:30 a.m. sharp. He walked in with a slight limp, the knee replacement from 2018 acting up in the damp weather. He chose a booth near the door so he could see his friend arrive. He ordered a black coffee. He was polite to the waitress, a young girl named Sarah, leaving a $5 bill on the table immediately as a pre-tip, knowing he'd be occupying the table for a while. He opened a small, leather-bound notebook. Inside were the names of the men he had lost. Every year, he read the names. It was his way of keeping them alive. He was deep in thought, staring at the name Lance Corporal Rodriguez, when the shadow fell over his table. He wasn't bothering anyone. He wasn't talking to himself. He wasn't asking customers for change. He was a man mourning his brothers existing in a space he had fought to protect. The irony was palpable. Thorne had spent 30 years defending the Constitution, defending the rights of Americans to sit in diners, to walk down the street to live free from tyranny. And now a representative of the domestic government, a child with a badge who had likely never been punched in the face, let alone shot at, was treating him like an enemy combatant. Thorne looked at Vance's boots. They were polished but cheap. He looked at the way Vance stood, weight forward, aggressive, unbalanced. He has no training, Thorne thought, or he slept through it. In the Corps, a stance like that would get you knocked over in a heartbeat. "Officer," Thorne said, his voice calm, measuring every syllable. "I don't want to make a scene. I live 3 miles from here. I come here every year. Ask Sarah the waitress. She knows me." Vance didn't look at Sarah. He didn't look at the other customers who were now whispering, phones raised. He was locked in. Tunnel vision. He had issued a command and the subject had refused. In his limited view of the world, that was a challenge to his authority that could not be abided. "I'm not asking the waitress," Vance snapped. "I'm telling you, you're trespassing. The manager wants you gone. That makes this a lawful order." Thorne sighed, closing his notebook gently. He slipped it into his jacket pocket. He saw the manager hovering near the kitchen door, peeking out like a coward. He knew exactly who had made the call. Brad Jenkins was 32 years old and considered himself a visionary in the world of fast casual dining. He had been the manager of the Iron Skillet for 6 months, hired by the absentee owners to revitalize the brand. Jenkins didn't care about the history of the diner. He didn't care that it had been a meeting spot for local workers and retirees for 40 years. He wanted to attract a younger, hipper crowd. He wanted to sell avocado toast and artisanal blends, not drip coffee and grits. Jenkins was a man obsessed with appearances. He constantly checked the diner's reflection in the mirror behind the counter. He smoothed his hair, he adjusted his tie, and he constantly scanned the dining room for anything that disrupted his aesthetic. When Marcus Thorne walked in, Jenkins didn't see a hero. He saw a blemish. From his perch behind the register, Jenkins watched Thorne limp to the table. He saw the old jacket. He saw the scars on Thorne's face. He saw the dark skin. and his mind steeped in unspoken biases and a desperate need to gentrify his dining room made a snap judgment. Homeless, Jenkins thought. Or mentally ill. He watched Thorne order a single coffee. Cheap, Jenkins thought. He's going to sit there for hours, use the free heat, and scare away the lunch crowd. It didn't matter that the diner was only half full when Thorne arrived. It didn't matter that Thorne was silent. It didn't matter that Thorne was cleaner and better dressed than half the construction workers who ate there daily. Jenkins saw what he wanted to see. He let Thorne sit there for 15 minutes, stewing in his own prejudice. He walked past the table once, pretending to check the sugar dispensers. Thorne didn't look at him. He was reading his notebook. This irritated Jenkins even more. He's crazy, Jenkins decided, scribbling nonsense in a diary. At 11:42 a.m., Jenkins went into the back office. He didn't approach Thorne. He didn't ask if everything was okay. He didn't ask if he wanted to order food. He picked up the phone and dialed the non-emergency line, though his tone suggested an emergency. "This is Brad at the Iron Skillet," he said, his voice hushed and urgent. "I need an officer here. We have a transient male refusing to leave." "Is he being violent?" the dispatcher asked. "He's aggressive?" Jenkins lied. "He's muttering to himself. He's making the other customers very uncomfortable. I think he might be on something. He's got scars all over his face." "Has he threatened anyone?" "He's loitering," Jenkins pressed. "I've asked him to leave, and he won't." That was another lie. Jenkins hadn't said a word to him. "I need him removed before he causes a scene. We have families in here." The call was logged. Suspicious person, refusing to leave, possible intoxication. Jenkins hung up, feeling a surge of power. He was cleaning up the shop. He was protecting his brand. He straightened his tie and walked back out to the floor, waiting for the police to do his dirty work. When he saw the patrol car pull up, he felt a smug satisfaction. He didn't know he was dialing the number that would end his career. He didn't know that his intolerance was about to collide with a force of nature. Do you think business managers should be held financially liable when they make false police reports based on appearance? Leave a comment below with yes or no. Jenkins stood by the kitchen door, arms crossed, watching as Officer Vance marched in. He gave Vance a subtle nod, pointing toward Booth 4. He didn't want to get his hands dirty. He wanted the state to remove the problem. He watched Vance approach the table. He saw the confrontation begin. He saw the customers turning their heads. He thought he was winning. He thought he was asserting control. He had no idea that he had just lit a fuse that would blow his entire world apart. Officer Kyle Vance parked his cruiser in the fire lane, the tires crunching loudly against the curb. He didn't care. He was the law. He turned off the engine but left the lights flashing a silent announcement of his presence. Vance had grown up hearing stories about police work from his father, a retired sergeant who constantly complained that the job was gone because of politics and soft leadership. Kyle Vance had internalized that bitterness. He entered the academy believing that he was a soldier in a war zone, not a servant of the community. He believed that respect was commanded, not earned. His personnel file was already thick for someone with less than a year on the job. 2 months ago, he had pulled over a soccer mom for a broken taillight and ended up screaming at her until she cried because she didn't find her insurance card fast enough. A formal complaint was filed. It was dismissed as a training issue. 3 weeks ago, he had tackled a teenager in a park because he fit the description of a shoplifter. The teenager was the mayor's nephew. That complaint was still pending, but Vance had been warned by his sergeant to cool it. He hadn't cooled it. He was simmering. He felt like the department was holding him back. He was eager for a real collar. He wanted a story to tell at the bar. When the call came in from the Iron Skillet, transient male refusing to leave aggressive, Vance lit up. This was it. A simple trespass. A bum who needed to be taught a lesson. It was low risk, high reward. He could flex his muscles, clear the scene, and be the hero who saved the lunch rush. He walked into the diner with his chest puffed out. He adjusted his belt. He scanned the room, ignoring the friendly nods from a few regulars. His eyes locked onto the black man in the field jacket. Textbook Vance thought. Look at him. Scars. Dirty jacket. Probably high or drunk. He didn't see the clean fingernails. He didn't see the posture. He didn't see the expensive watch on Thorne's wrist, a Breitling, a retirement gift from his unit. He saw a stereotype. Vance marched over his mind already made up. He wasn't there to investigate. He was there to enforce. He didn't ask the manager for details. He didn't ask the waitress what happened. He went straight to the target. "You need to leave now," he had said. Now standing over Thorne, Vance felt the eyes of the room on him. He felt his adrenaline spiking. This guy wasn't cowering. This guy was talking back. This guy was challenging him. He claims he's a Marine, Vance thought, dismissing it instantly. They all say that. Every bum with a camo jacket claims he was a SEAL or a Ranger. "I'm the King of England," Vance had said. He believed it was a clever line. "I'm giving you a lawful order." Vance repeated, his voice getting louder, harsher. "You are trespassing on private property. The owner wants you gone. If you don't leave voluntarily, you will be leaving in cuffs. Do you understand me?" He was banking on fear. He was waiting for Thorne to crack, to beg, to scurry away. But Thorne just sat there looking at him with those deep, sad eyes. It infuriated Vance. It made him feel small. And a man like Kyle Vance would burn the world down before he allowed himself to feel small. "I'm not trespassing," Thorne said calmly. "I'm a customer, and I'm waiting for my friend. He'll be here in 5 minutes. Why don't you wait with me, officer? Maybe you'll learn something." It was an invitation, but Vance heard an insult. The air in the diner was thick, heavy with the smell of frying onions and impending violence. The silence from the other tables was deafening. By now, 4 or 5 cell phones were held up, camera lenses recording every frame. Thorne kept his hands visible, resting on the table. He knew the drill. He knew that any sudden movement would give this kid the excuse he was desperate for. "I'm not waiting," Vance spat. "And I'm not asking again. ID now." "I told you," Thorne said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming the voice of command he had used to direct airstrikes and troop movements. "It is in my pocket. I am going to reach for it. Do not panic." "Don't tell me what to do." Vance stepped closer, his thigh bumping against the table. "Do it slowly." Thorne moved his right hand deliberate and smooth. He reached into the inner pocket of his field jacket. Vance's hand hovered over his taser, his fingers twitching. The tension was a wire pulled tight, ready to snap. Thorne withdrew a leather wallet. He flipped it open. Inside was not a driver's license. It was his Department of Defense retired identification card. Next to it was his VA health card. He slid the wallet across the table. "Major Marcus Thorne, USMC retired." Vance looked at the wallet. He barely read it. He saw a blue card. He saw a chip. But his brain was stuck in a loop. Fake. It's fake. He printed it at the library. "This doesn't prove anything," Vance sneered, shoving the wallet back. "Anyone can print a fake ID. Where's your driver's license? Where's your state ID?" "That is a federal identification card," Thorne said, his patience finally beginning to fray at the edges. "It outranks your driver's license, son. Look at the hologram. Look at the rank." "Don't call me son," Vance snapped. "I don't care about your fake badge. You're stalling. You're trespassing. You're under arrest." A woman at the next table, an elderly lady with blue hair, spoke up. "Officer, he's been sitting here quietly. He's a veteran. Leave him alone." Vance spun around, pointing a finger at her. "Ma'am, stay back. Do not interfere with a police investigation." "It's not an investigation," someone else shouted from the counter. "It's a lunch break. Let the man eat." "Back up, all of you," Vance yelled. He was losing control of the scene. He felt the walls closing in. He had to act. He had to assert dominance. He turned back to Thorne. "Stand up. Hands behind your back." Thorne looked at the officer. He looked at the name tag, Vance. He memorized it. "You are making a career-ending mistake, Officer Vance," Thorne said. "I am giving you one last chance to walk away. Call your supervisor. Run my name. Do your job before you do something you can't undo." "I am doing my job," Vance shouted. He reached out and grabbed Thorne's arm. Thorne didn't flinch. His arm felt like iron under the jacket. He didn't pull away, but he didn't rise. "Get up!" Vance yanked. Thorne stood. He stood slowly, unfolding his frame, rising to his full height of 6'2". He towered over the officer, but he didn't attack. He didn't posture. He turned his body, presenting his back to the officer. "I am complying," Thorne said loudly, his voice booming through the diner. "I am not resisting. Everyone here is a witness. I am complying with an unlawful order to prevent this officer from hurting anyone else." Vance didn't care about the speech. He jammed Thorne's arm up behind his back, twisting it painfully. It was a compliance hold designed to inflict pain. Thorne's bad shoulder screamed in protest, but he bit his lip and remained silent. "Stop resisting," Vance yelled for the cameras, even though Thorne was standing perfectly still. "I am not resisting," Thorne repeated calmly. Vance grabbed the handcuffs from his belt. Click, click. The steel ratcheted tight around Thorne's wrists. The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut was the sound of a career dying, though Officer Vance didn't hear it yet. He only heard the blood rushing in his ears. He shoved Thorne forward, pushing him out of the booth. Thorne stumbled slightly, his bad knee buckling, but he caught his balance. "Walk," Vance commanded. He marched Thorne down the center aisle of the iron skillet. It was a walk of shame, but not for the man in handcuffs. The shame belonged entirely to the man with the badge. The patrons were on their feet now. "He's a hero, you idiot!" A man in a construction vest yelled. "I got this on video, officer." A college student shouted. "You're going viral, buddy. Call the police on the police." Someone laughed darkly. Vance ignored them, his face red, his jaw set. He pushed Thorne toward the door. Brad Jenkins, the manager, was nowhere to be seen. He had retreated into the kitchen, suddenly realizing that the trash he wanted taken out was actually a beloved member of the community. Thorne held his head high. He looked straight ahead. He didn't look like a criminal. He looked like a prisoner of war who knew that his captors were incompetent. "My wallet," Thorne said calmly as they reached the door. "You left my wallet on the table." "We'll get it later," Vance grunted. "Secure my property, officer," Thorne said. "It contains my federal identification. You will need that for your report, unless you plan on losing evidence." Vance hesitated. He knew he couldn't leave the ID. He shoved Thorne against the wall near the register. "Stay." He ran back, grabbed the wallet, and stuffed it into his pocket. He dragged Thorne out the front door and into the rain. The cool air hit Thorne's face. He took a deep breath. He saw the flashing lights of the cruiser. "Officer Vance," Thorne said quietly. "My platoon sergeant, Master Sergeant Miller, will be arriving in 2 minutes. He drives a black Silverado. When he gets here and sees I'm not at our table, he's going to ask questions. You might want to have an answer ready." "Shut up," Vance said. He opened the back door of the cruiser and pushed Thorne inside. "Watch your head." He slammed the door. Thorne sat in the back of the plastic cage. It wasn't the first time he'd been in a confined space. He closed his eyes and began to meditate, a technique he learned to manage his PTSD. Breathe in, breathe out. This is temporary. The truth is permanent. Vance got into the driver's seat. He was shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by a creeping sense of unease. The crowd outside the diner was growing. People were filming the car. He threw the car into drive and peeled away, desperate to get back to the station, desperate to book this vagrant and validate his actions. As they turned the corner, a black Silverado passed them heading toward the diner. Thorne saw it through the window. He smiled sadly. Miller is going to be pissed, he thought. Vance picked up his radio. Dispatch Unit 4 Alpha, 1 in custody, trespassing, resisting disorderly conduct. Copy 4 Alpha, bringing him to the house. Affirmative. Vance looked in the rearview mirror. Thorne was staring right at him. The eyes weren't angry, they were pitying. You really should have checked that ID, son, Thorne said softly. I said shut up. Vance turned up the radio, trying to drown out the voice of his own impending doom. The drive to the precinct took 15 minutes. Vance drove fast, aggressive, weaving through traffic. Thorne sat silently cataloging every traffic violation the officer was committing. They arrived at the precinct. Vance pulled into the sally port, the garage door rumbling shut behind them. He hauled Thorne out of the car. Let's go. Booking. He marched Thorne through the heavy steel doors and into the intake area. The precinct was busy. Officers were typing reports, prisoners were being processed. The watch commander on duty was Lieutenant Frank O'Malley. O'Malley was 55 years old, a veteran of the force and a man who had zero patience for nonsense. He was sipping a coffee, looking over a duty roster when Vance walked in with Thorne. O'Malley looked up. He saw the handcuffs. He saw the field jacket. He saw the face. O'Malley froze. He squinted. He set his coffee down. Vance, O'Malley said, his voice dangerously low. What do you have there? Trespassing Lou, Vance said, puffing out his chest. Refused to leave a business, resisted arrest, disorderly. O'Malley didn't look at Vance. He looked at Thorne. He walked around the desk, his eyes widening. Marcus, O'Malley asked. Thorne nodded. Hello, Frank. It's been a while. Vance looked between them, confused. You know this guy Lou? He's a transient. He was loitering at the Iron Skillet. Transient? O'Malley turned to Vance, his face turning a shade of purple that suggested an imminent stroke. You idiot. You absolute moron. Lou, Take those cuffs off, O'Malley barked. Right now? But he refused to identify. Take them off. O'Malley roared, the sound echoing off the concrete walls. The entire booking room went silent. Vance fumbled for his keys. His hands were shaking violently now. He unlocked the cuffs. Thorne rubbed his wrists. There were deep red welts where the metal had bitten into his skin. Marcus, I am so sorry, O'Malley said, reaching out to shake Thorne's hand. Are you okay? I'm fine, Frank, Thorne said. Shoulder's a little sore, but I'm worried about this young officer's eyesight. He seems to have trouble reading federal identification. He showed you ID. O'Malley turned on Vance. He showed me a fake military card, Vance stammered. It looked like a printout. Show it to me, O'Malley demanded. Vance pulled the wallet from his pocket. He handed it to the lieutenant. O'Malley opened it. He pulled out the blue card. He held it up to Vance's face. You see this chip? O'Malley hissed. You see this hologram? This is a Department of Defense Common Access card. It belongs to Major Marcus Thorne, USMC, retired. Silver Star, Purple Heart. He runs the Veterans Housing Board that we partner with. Vance felt the blood drain from his face. His knees felt weak. Major, you arrested a decorated officer for eating lunch, O'Malley said. You didn't verify his ID. You ignored his statement, and you dragged him in here in cuffs. I didn't know. Because you didn't ask. O'Malley threw the wallet back at Vance. Badge and gun. On the desk. Now. Lou, please, it was a mistake. It was an assault, Thorne corrected gently, and a violation of my civil rights, and false imprisonment. Badge. Gun. O'Malley pointed to the desk. Vance slowly unbuckled his belt. He placed his Glock on the counter. He unpinned his badge. He looked like a child who had been caught stealing from the cookie jar. Only the cookies were a man's freedom. "Go to the locker room," O'Malley said. "Wait for internal affairs. Don't speak to anyone. You are on administrative suspension pending termination." Vance walked away, his head hanging low. He looked back once at Thorne. Thorne didn't look back. He was busy accepting a fresh cup of coffee from the lieutenant. "I need to make a call, Frank," Thorne said. "Sergeant Miller is probably tearing that diner apart looking for me." "Use my office," O'Malley said. "And Marcus, we're going to make this right." Thorne looked at the red marks on his wrists. "Yes, Frank, we are." The video hit the internet before Thorne had even left the station. By 2:00 p.m., it had 100,000 views. By the evening news, it was national. Decorated Marine arrested for loitering while black. Rookie cop humiliates war hero. The visuals were damning. The calm, stoic veteran versus the screaming, aggressive rookie. The community outrage was immediate. Protesters gathered outside the Iron Skillet that very night. They weren't violent, but they were loud. They demanded answers. Brad Jenkins, the manager, tried to issue a statement saying he was following protocol. It backfired spectacularly. The owners of the Iron Skillet fired him the next morning via a public Facebook post to save their business. But the damage was done. The diner, once a beloved local spot, saw its revenue drop 60% in a week. Officer Kyle Vance was not just fired. He was charged with assault and official oppression. The union refused to back him. The video was too clear. His previous complaints were leaked to the press. He became the face of everything wrong with modern policing, arrogance, bias, and incompetence. He would never wear a badge again. Thorne sued. He didn't want to. He was a private man. But he knew that if he didn't, it would happen again to someone who couldn't fight back. The lawsuit named the city of Fort Worth the police department and the Iron Skillet. The evidence was overwhelming. The city settled quickly to avoid a public trial that would have aired all their dirty laundry regarding hiring practices. $1.2 million. Thorne didn't buy a sports car. He didn't move to a mansion. He took the money and he put it into the housing initiative he sat on. He built a new wing for homeless veterans. He named it the Lance Corporal Rodriguez Center. He also paid for a full-page ad in the local paper. It didn't attack the police. It didn't attack the diner. It was a picture of the Constitution with a simple caption, "Read it, understand it, protect it, for everyone." 6 months later, Marcus Thorne walked back into the Iron Skillet. The new manager, a woman named Linda who had been a waitress there for 20 years, greeted him with a hug. "Coffee, Major?" she asked. "Please," Thorne said. "And a slice of cherry pie." He sat in booth 4. He opened his notebook. He read the names. He was still scarred. He was still tired. But he was free. Justice isn't always swift, and it isn't always pretty. But on that day in that diner, a man who had fought for his country proved that dignity is a weapon that no badge can disarm. This story reminds us that respect is not about the uniform you wear, but the actions you take. It teaches us that bias is a blinder that can cost you everything, and it proves that sometimes the quietest man in the room is the one you should fear the most. What do you think was the $1? $2 million settlement enough? Should Officer Vance have faced jail time? Let us know in the comments below. And if you believe in justice for our veterans, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us tell the stories that matter. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and always check the ID.